I'm gonna start the recording, and I should start by saying that disclaimer: everything that is gonna be said today is subject to change. So, take that as you may. And yeah, hey, we're
Yes, I don't really know him very well, but I do know.
well. That's a great way to start it. We got you as well. We're racking up the EPs. Give us a second. You can always type on the voice text chat, and you didn't know how to get to the States. Jesus. But yeah, if you guys have anything to say before we start, you can always type it.
Yeah, maybe I can start with a little overview of sort of what we've been sort of working on and sort of give a behind the scenes. Is that what you mean, Sentience?
Yeah. If you can start us off, Meta, that would be
Yeah,
amazing. You're so good at that.
I'll start us off. Essentially, like, we've really only been formed by for about 3 or so weeks now. It's been a sort of um, yeah, like sort of getting our affairs in order. So things that we're sort of working on right now, after this previous addendum was uh, we're sort of blitzing our internal charter right now. We're trying to sort of refine it so that it can be reviewed uh, by by our council. And that's the big milestone that we sort of need to work towards in terms of finalizing our foundation and eventually sort of transferring over funds, the community funds from the parallel side. Um, we're starting to schedule some meetings to discuss like technicals for staking contracts, and I think like how we're framing, our sort of approach right now is. Uh, we we're sort of trying to get our ducks in a row. We haven't sort of set a timeline for when Prime is going to launch yet, but we want to do our part in sort of having the sort of pieces in place so that when we do decide, what when it's time to launch, that we aren't sort of hung up on a particular item that we sort of forgot. So essentially, we're sort of working towards these goals. And sort of ensuring that like we're not going to be the bottleneck for when happens. Um, Other than that, yeah, it's been a fun last few weeks. We're sort of learning how to work with each other as sort of we sort of been formed or voted by you guys, and we're still um, uh, getting to know one another a little bit better. But I just from sharing calls and being on meetings with the rest of this group, I can say that everyone is really a pleasure to work with, and we are, working together very well.
That was great. Yeah, I would like to also preface that for this community call, we're gonna be mostly focused on answering decisions on the addendum first, and upcoming Echelon activities a little bit later, so we can get through the the hot issues that a lot of people have been asking us. So, is there anything else one of the APs wants to say before we get into the question section?
I think we're good to get into it. Yeah, and just again, want to thank everybody who's getting up on a Saturday, either morning or late in the evening, depending on where you live, and joining with us. I think it's we want to try and do this as regularly as we can to just make sure that we're keeping the process going. And I think the weekly recaps are helping show what's the boots on the ground work that we're putting out there. But obviously, the questions we answer in Discord, but it's different to just have a discussion with everybody as a community, and we want to kind of open it up and make sure we can talk things out. So thank you to everyone. Did you already talk a little bit, Sentience, about where people should drop questions? You can drop them into the questions channel if you want. We'll keep an eye on that, and we can also pull people up on stage.
Yes, to get up on stage, please use the show request, the little hand that'll go above your icon, so I can get you up here to ask a question, or you can of course, as Mick said, type it on the question channel. Also, Cold is restarting, trying to see if he can join us, but he's on the airport, so he might not be available for this call. Oh, hello! Hey, we got him. We got him.
Oh my gosh. Incredible. All I had to do was restart.
That's how it works with technologies. Oops.
Yep, turn it off, turn it back on again. Works every time.
All right.
So are we in the questions? Are we opening it up now to questions now?
We're waiting for some questions to pop out. I mean, nobody's really asking anything, so it is a little bit weird for me.
Get up here. Raise those hands.
We are all very polite and gentlemanlike, so don't worry. We accept all kinds of questions.
There we go. We have our first volunteer.
Yeah, we can hear you. What's up, man?
Thanks for hosting this. So I have a question regarding the Prime event snapshots. So going forward, will you continue to do retroactive snapshots, or will you announce them in advance? So is it possible that you say, okay, we took a snapshot like a week ago, or will you announce them? Saying we will take one on this date.
Yeah, I can answer that. While I can't promise anything, I can say that we definitely prefer giving advance notice for Prime events, but with the future being an infinitely long time, and with crazy circumstances that may happen in the future, there is a chance that another retroactive snapshot will happen when we have another game join the platform or something along those lines. But I can say, at least on an individual point, that some form of lead up is greatly preferred, and that is more likely moving forward.
Yeah,
I would say. I'll just real quick. Yeah, I would say that it's important to emphasize that each one of us has our own opinion in going into these decisions, right? And ultimately, we move as a group and need to reach consensus for anything to be decided. So I personally would echo Paul's sentiment. It makes more sense to me at this time that the snapshots Prime events would be announced at events, but again, that's not something that we have reached consensus on or ratified in any way. But I would echo that sentiment.
Okay, understood. Thanks.
Thank you so much
I can add a little bit of color to that as well. So I think like when we sort of were coming up with the sort of concept of Prime events, we discussed internally like maybe these are sort of avenues for us to sort of celebrate, similar to like how a key snapshot occurs within sort of the Parallels realm. That like there's sort of an excitement, there's giveaways. That's not a suggestion that that's going to happen for Prime events, but like we do see it as something that like the community as a whole can sort of be aware of that timeline and celebrate. But as to Fall and Cole's point, like things still have to be decided. We don't really know how it's going to be rolled out yet. I hadn't even considered specifically like how different games might impact something like a Prime event, but it is how we envisioned it in our early discussions was it's just something that we can celebrate together.
Does that cover you, Mago?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks so much for being up here. Do you have anything else you'd like to ask?
Not for now.
All right.
Thanks.
Yeah. I'll just.
What do I need?
Yep. There we go. He did it on his own. Great. I do want to kick him. I feel bad about that, but I would like to say one more thing. Oh, we have a follow-up question from Silk over here. But yeah, just before we get on to that question, I would like to say that compared to other entities, companies, etc. Echelon is something unique in the ecosystem, being, created through Parallel and everybody else. And I think we are really trying to show that we are willing and wanting to communicate with the community, and we are hearing you, and we want to answer everything, but you need to understand that everything takes a little bit of time and a lot of consideration. So as much as possible, please always be patient, and thank you so much for that. So yeah, what's up, Silk? How you doing?
Hey guys, how's it going? Can you hear me?
Yep, loud and clear.
Okay. So just as a follow-up, I actually had two short questions. The first one is, given what you guys were saying, I just wanted to clarify some confusion I think most of us had as to how the snapshot happened and the communication that happened before that, where you guys were saying that, or some people were saying that this is just a single card snapshot, and then what happened was the decision was changed and it became a prime set snapshot, and there was a change in the percentages and the different prime events that will happen. So just to understand why that happened, and the second question would be, given the amount of feedback you guys have gotten, is that decision for change, or are you guys just sticking with it?
I don't think that we're planning on changing it at this time. So I guess to address to address like the components of this individually, yeah, I guess this sort of goes back to maybe a bit of growing pains between, kind of like us and the community as well. Just making sure that people understand that when we speak, we're sort of speaking for ourselves, like in the Discord, and not necessarily for the entire group. And that official communications will ultimately be the decisions that have been deliberated and debated and, more quote unquote official. In terms of, allocations changing, I guess I would say I don't agree with that, because there wasn't really a set allocation before. I would suggest that folks sort of be a little bit wary about making projections based on what was ultimately a proposal that has been subject to change for this whole time, and not necessarily view something that was in a proposal as being final. A big function of what we're going to be doing is kind of like working to ultimately finalize those things. But until then, like the prime proposal is just that, it's a proposal.
Okay, cool. Would you mind if I asked another question?
Please go ahead.
It's on the same topic. Yeah. So would you be able to explain the reason why the decision was taken to do it in this way, regardless of the previous proposals or what everyone thought? Just reasoning of why it was decided that it was going to be done in the way you set out in the addendum.
Sure. So as we set out in the addendum, we had this retroactive snapshot, and then we have 4 remaining prime events, and those 4 remaining prime events will be 1/6 of each of the total prime that we're going to allocate, and that will cover 4 pack drops. So 2 pack drops came before then, and rather than do sort of 2 retroactive snapshots to capture PD1 individually and PD2 individually, we felt that it made sense to capture both of them together. Again, then there's also sort of what do you do with the pre-sale cards. And so similar to the conversations that had been had by the candidates prior to the election and then shortly thereafter about, this anti-dilution percentage for OG holders, this ultimately manifested in this 1/3 going to what is essentially, I would call it like 2.5 pack drops. So in terms of like, well, those people get more, it's like, well, yes, they get more because there were fewer cards, and that's just how it's going to work. As more cards enter the ecosystem, people get diluted over time, and that, if we had done a snapshot for PD1 and a snapshot for PD2, PD1 would probably have even more because PD2 introduces a bunch more cards, right? So that was sort of our thinking there was we can still sort of maintain or live up to a lot of what we spoke about in terms of making sure that the collectors who sort of took the biggest punts and supported us earliest are rewarded in a less dilutive way, while continuing to split this up going forward, so that there's additional incentives for subsequent pack drops and subsequent collectors to enter the ecosystem. Does that answer your question?
A little bit, yeah. I think I'd want to leave it for someone else to follow up, because I feel like this is going to be a topic we might discuss for a while. So thank you for answering the question. I'll go back to the audience.
Yeah, no worries.
I can add, I guess, a little more color as to maybe why as well. So, I think like to sort of understand the timeline of like how these things have developed. I think like we had the EP or the Echelon proposal come out, and it sort of gave us like a sense of like the weighting of like how much is going out, but really didn't sort of provide a timeline. And that timeline that is assumed was that like once game launched, that this sort of pool, that claimable prime would be sort of launched then, and it would be split between every single card holder at that time period. And I think like early on during like our EP election discussions, a group of us, myself, Fall, Rebel, had sort of thrown around this idea of like, how can we expand governance prior to game launch, and so we did propose this sort of shaving off from the P2E pool, and then dropping it later. So there would be two drops, one in one right after. So I think that like the frame of reference here was this sort of proposal that we had thrown out there. Again, that's nothing that was decided upon, and what that was essentially at PD3 we would sort of release I think it's like 6.5% of the prime, and then whatever we carved out would happen at game launch. So it'd just be another drop. But I think when we got together and thought about that a little bit more, what we were sort of understanding was that if that were to happen, the folks, the community that buy at maybe pack drop 4, pack drop 5, they sort of miss the boat, right? And so our decisions are trying to provide like a framework that like we can release prime at any given time frame between now and, well, not now. We have a certain critical path to resolve, but we want to be able to release prime sort of evenly and fairly at sort of some future time frame in looking forward. So that's sort of why we sort of position that, because with this framework, if we decide that PD5 is the right time, like there is a sort of distribution in place. So I think that that's sort of where we landed with that, and we felt that 1/6 distributed between like all the pack drops all the way through just allows us the flexibility to expand governance.
That was a great answer, Meta. Before we get anybody up, I would like to talk about some questions we had on the public voice text chat, which probably should get a better name soon. So one of the questions was a quick one from Zed, which was, when is the Prime Event 2 coming? Does anyone want to answer that, or should I just say that it's to be...
Sure, I'll answer it. And it's coming soon. I know everyone loves hearing that answer, but it's happening soon. Sorry that I can't give you an exact date yet.
Sorry, I got cut off as well. But yeah, it is to be announced. But we can tell you it has not happened yet, so that's something. I mean, it's 50%, right? It will happen or it has happened, and it hasn't happened. So there you go.
I feel like I'm playing a color commentator here. So I'll just throw in like, so we like maybe when we were thinking about again this PAM event, like when would it occur? So there was thoughts where we were throwing around like, does it occur on this exact date of the parallel snapshot? And then we sort of shifted to sort of like, what about spacing it between this sort of, we let parallel celebrate the key and their sort of thing, and then we do this sort of prime event sort of in between the sort of the key snapshot and this next pack drop that's coming up. That's not a commitment to a time frame. It's just more of like how we're sort of framing the discussion. So it could be a sort of an echelon thing. That's sort of how some of the ways that we were thinking about it internally, just as a sort of frame of reference for the community. Again, we don't know. We haven't decided that yet, but I'm sure we'll have those discussions soon.
All right, thank you, Meta. I'm gonna jump in to the next question from Snikt. I'm sorry for my pronunciation on that one. He's asking, is there a chance you guys debate these issues in a more public forum? We would love to see who proposed taking essentially 2 retroactive snapshots, who was originally in favor, and what each of you thought on the subject.
I can kind of step in on this a little bit. I think it's a really good ask, Snickets too, because honestly, as me as a community member in parallel from the outside would want to see how are the decisions being made. How are you guys? Is everybody agreeing? Is everybody you guys having fist fights in the room with each other? How does this stuff work? And realistically, we work really well together as a team. But we also kind of have to be, I think, a unit representing Echelon to a certain extent. And whether or not we like it, things start getting kind of political when we call out, oh, this was one person's proposal versus another. You might have everybody, come after Mick or come after Sentience because we brought something up. So doing something like hosting our team meetings in a public forum, from the one side would kind of create a bit of cheering for your favorite EP versus another one. And that's not really a situation we want, because we're all Echelon and we all want Prime and Parallel to succeed at the end of the day. So we are we want to be aligned, and behind the scenes we're not really having any sort of dramatic over the top battles that I think would be too interesting to the outside. The flip side of it as well is just, we can already see with answering questions in the Discord, we want to be as transparent as possible. But realistically, we're in a spot where markets move based off decisions that we make, and we have to be really, really careful a bit with just when things are not set in stone, how we talk about it, how much we share. These community calls are the place for us to kind of give the in progress decisions, because a lot of times we need things to be set in stone before we do an addendum or the next announcement. So having every single status meeting be public is probably not the way to go. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense to me at least. So I will go on to the next question, which is from Jake, and asks, has there been any consideration or talk about saying something like Prime Event 2 will be between X and Y date, where that's perhaps a couple of week period, instead of saying play to earn is exactly at X date, would give some notice to people while helping prevent the obvious P&D silliness that can happen with an exact date. Should I rephrase that, or?
No, I think that's a good question. Thanks, Jake. So I think we've just kind of started to discuss this, and so we don't have necessarily an answer yet. And I'm not sure of my own. I don't know if I have a strong opinion about it, but I think it's a good idea. I think there's pros and cons. I think as Meta said, we do want to make it kind of a celebratory event, but that event could be over the period of a week, or it could be a specific point in time. And I think it could help with some of the concerns you mentioned, Jake. But I think we'll take that. We hear that perspective, and we'll consider that when we think about the timing of the next Prime event.
I agree with that. On to another great question, because in all honesty, these are all great questions up until now. So Zed asks, are the ethic rules for EPs trading with privileged info in place, and will they be made public?
I think I can take this one, and then Meta can provide color as he does. So, are the rules in place? Yes, we do have some guidelines and rules, and will they be made public? We might, and again, I can't commit to this. We might be able to make our process public, but sort of touching on what Mick said previously, I don't think that we can say at any given moment what is or isn't privileged information, because that in and of itself is a market signal. So, and again, this isn't true. I'm just using this as an example. The core or card backs or something, that ends up being a signal to the market that we're discussing these things, and people might, take that in a bunch of different ways. And we don't want to sort of trigger, massive amounts of speculation on something that we're just discussing before there's anything concrete in place. Then you put yourself in a situation where it's like, oh, well, you guys had this trading rule and I bought 10 cores, like, what the hell, like they didn't go up, and then, it creates tricky situations. So, I hope that this answers your question to a satisfactory extent, which is this was one of the first things that we spoke about after the election, and we have had rules in place internally, and we are sort of working through whether we can make the rules themselves public while accepting that the actual restrictions in real time are not really able to be made public.
The charter, I know we keep on talking a lot about the charter, but we are going to just lay a lot of like our principles and things out, because again, we're taking some extra time because the charter is going to be the document for future EPs, and I hope that we're really trying to take the perspective of not ourselves as Nick and Sentience and Meta, but more like the EPs as a collective 5 years from now in the future. How is Echelon going to have a document that can guide them and give them the principles of how to abide? And so that's why we're taking the extra time there.
Okay, guess Mika could continue there. A little bit. You're answering beyond chat, or should we answer on stage? What do you prefer?
Oh yeah, I mean, okay, yeah.
So the question here, just for the video, is how accountability will be enforced if no one knows what the rules are eternally?
Yeah, so essentially, we know what the rules are, and we know, like for right now, EPs will have to police each other, and there's some inherent risk to this, right? Which is anybody can load up a hot wallet with fresh ETH off of a centralized exchange and do whatever they want without people knowing. So there's an inherent amount of trust that has to be baked into what we're doing anyway, just because of how blockchains work. Beyond that, we did sort of make our primary wallets public, and I have committed to trading. Like, again, I can only speak for myself, but I have committed to trading on my primary wallet because that's the point of this is to be transparent. And, I think that is an ethos that we all largely share. So, we do have wallets that are trackable by the community and have been tracked by the community. And that also means that they're trackable by our fellow EPs. And we can and do hold each other accountable to the rules that we agree on collectively, even if we can't explicitly say what the guidelines are yet. Hopefully some more information there once the charter is able to be published, and we can't say explicitly what is or isn't allowed to be traded by us for market signal reasons.
Okay, so I do have a question here from Milamp, Milamp, yeah, I think that's how you say it. The question is, can you help us out with Prime Event 2 a bit more? you risk killing the ParaSet market for fear of missing the snapshot. Can you give us a date? Can you give us a date? It won't be before. Do we have at least a week or 2 weeks? So basically, he's probably asking, as much as I understand, that can we give a date or a round date on Prime Event 2 so ParaSets don't get killed by the market? Is this what I'm getting? Sorry if I am not correct on this one.
Yeah, I'd love. I don't know if you can elaborate a little bit more on the part about ParaSets being killed by the market. But just so I can hear your concern, I think I think based on what we've said, it would be hard for us to give a date, and we'll give. I guess I'm a little confused too, because I do recall that you had proposed this concept of secret snapshot. I remember reading that shortly after Prime Proposals came out, and so I'm just want to make sure I hear your concern and maybe where your perspective changed there. Do we have some time from today to build more sets?
I would say that
yes.
you have a 99.9% chance to have time still to build more sets. I can't promise anything. I'm so sorry.
No, okay.
And time is relative.
Here, let me again fill the void here with this color. So we had discussed earlier that we want to announce it in advance, right? Like that's sort of like some of us. That's how we're feeling. We haven't decided on when that date is yet, so presumably if you're getting a set, today or tomorrow, you're probably fine. That was
you'll 100% be fine for Prime Event 3. I can say that. But no, what Meta said.
All right. Let's get to Mimi over here. All right. So any other questions? Anybody that would like to come up over here? That would be great. And of course, I'm taking questions over to the voice text chat. We are.
I had something that I wanted to say earlier on Snick's question, but I've switched devices here, so I think my mic should be more reliable now. But
yes,
it was on the question of debating between EPs, and while I don't think that we're going to start recording our meetings or having them live, I do think there is going to be an opportunity for potentially some a stage that's set up in a way to enable debates between EPs closer to the election. So I think that this year going into the election, it was fairly rushed, and there wasn't a huge amount of time other than the panels for people to share their individual opinions and stuff. And that's one thing I've been thinking about. And obviously it's a long way out. We have other things to focus on, but I do think there will be an opportunity maybe to have some type of more public forums and discussions between EPs when we get closer to that to the next election.
Great. I do want to say that we are reaching our time limit soon. No, we have a little bit time for more questions, of course, but we have around 10-15 more minutes, I would say, because we need to do some, people have a lot of things to do all the time. So yeah, is anybody else wanting to ask anything? Seems like we have somebody over here. Let's get them. Welcome back.
Guys, it's me again. Thank you.
We're back.
I didn't really think of this question in my head. I was expecting someone to ask it, but there was a lot of chat between people in the Discord and the EPs about the EPs looking at the distribution of specific sets. Some people are saying that some sets are OP, some sets are very underpowered. So there was some talk a few days ago, I think. I remember reading something about like how it's still in, you guys are still debating them. So is there anything you guys can share about the progress on that, when we could expect to hear back from you guys on what you think the distribution should be like for different sets and stuff?
Absolutely. So we've all collectively decided that the specific paraset redacted is going to be super overpowered. And no, I'm sorry, I'm just kidding around. Yeah, these things are actively being debated, and unfortunately, we don't have a release for precisely how paraset weightings have been determined to share at this time. We are working on it. There's a lot of details in terms of how we mathematically structure this, the formulas that go into it, and what is fair and productive and beneficial to the long-term health of the Echelon ecosystem. And parasets and the specific weightings, well, they're a fairly large part of that. So I apologize that I am asking for more patience around the release of paraset distributions, but we are working on it, and we hear your concerns.
All right.
I'll be the yes and person on this one. At the end of the day, like I kind of always want to bring us back to like the perspective for Echelon, like the stuff that is being set up, especially the guys working on the tokenomics and stuff, like setting this up for the next decade, like years and years down the road, of how not only how like obviously the first like drop goes, but how all of this ecosystem to function in the long term. And that's why, like, you know, there are times like in any of your jobs where it's like we got to get it done versus get it right. And this is a situation specifically where it's like we need to get it right. We have to like take the time that it's going to need to, and obviously we want to get the token and get the distribution out as quickly as we can. But we do need to make sure for this stuff that we think through all of the variables. That's why there's going to be time that's put into modeling and time that is put into like how this stuff plays out in the long term. So again, thank you guys for just like coming along with the process with us. And you know, we're not trying to like keep stuff hidden. It's just that we have to really think through a lot of angles on it.
Yeah, that was great said, Mick. Now, because I want to get to hey highs. I'm so horrible with the name. Sorry, man. Question that I want to answer. Let's go. I want someone to help me with going over some quick answers. All right. So, when can we expect more news regarding tokenomics? If anybody can help me get some quick answers to the crowd over here. We could all
TM.
To be determined. There we go. Great. Next one. From DeFi Dad. What's the hardest thing you're all debating lately since the Addendum drop? That's a great question. I don't know how much detail we can give on that one, but I can tell you way too many things. Way too many. Meta, can you give me some color?
I mean, maybe this is just one is very specifically when is the appropriate time to launch Prime. So I think that, like, you know, we haven't come to a conclusion yet. I think we want to sort of see everyone's opinion. We're sort of talking about it and you know, at length internally. But I think again it goes back to like what we're trying to do within with sort of things that we're putting out, or sort of how we're positioning ourselves with the these other sort of milestone objectives that we're doing, is that we sort of want to have you know, things in place for when if and when we decide to launch. But that to answer your question is one of the things that we are debating, and probably we still have some time to debate it, but that's one topic.
That's a great answer, Meta. Thank you. So finally, we get Hayes' question that I swear I didn't forget, and Dave reminded me. So here's a question: if there are 4 Prime Snapshot events remaining prior to the parallel game launch and Prime is a currency that will be implemented into other games, does it make strategic sense to allot a portion of Prime to snapshots applicable to those games and the broadening of the larger Echelon ecosystem, i.e., it could potentially incentivize other teams that intend to build on Prime, as well as the collectors associated with those communities if airdrop Prime rewards were reserved for those purposes. So basically, doesn't make sense to utilize Prime and keep it instead of maybe distributing it all for now, or maybe in the future. How can we use Prime to incentivize other communities and game coming into the ecosystem with it? You know, are we gonna do it through airdrops? And is this the best decision to give out the Prime that we have right now, or are we gonna be using future Prime?
So this is a great question, and dealing with initial allocations and trying to strike a balance between the things that would benefit the ecosystem in the short term, the people that have been along with us for the ride since the inception of Parallel and the first sale of our NFTs, balancing making sure that they feel included and heard, and also looking out to the infinite number of possibilities as to what the future could bring. It is a wonderful idea to have a allocation set aside to help bring on a new game and their community participants. So while this pool may not exist in a labeled form with a very specific number within the initial allocation, there is the Echelon and Parallel allocations within the initial allocations. And then additionally, while nothing here is set in stone, it is quite likely that through ongoing sync revenue, Echelon and Parallel should see an increase to the amount of Prime that they hold over time, assuming that we don't do anything with it, which would be a little silly, but let's just move past this little point. It is in Parallel's and Echelon's best interest, and I believe the best interest of the community as well, but it's in our best interest to ensure that the entire Prime ecosystem thrives. And if that means taking 5% of Prime that we have accrued or currently hold and giving it out to a new game's community building Prime launch initiatives, then you bet we're going to be doing that, because we want the absolute best for Prime in the long term and for all of you.
I just have one thing. I just have one thing to add, which is the success of the Prime ecosystem over time will also reduce the need from Echelon to provide Prime-based incentives for new games to join. Proving out over time that we have a sustainable and well-functioning economy for play-to-earn games will, I think, in and of itself be an attractive proposition as games look to sort of leverage this model and not have to reinvent the wheel on their own. Now, again, that said, that's maybe a more further long-term view. But as Fall said, we do have resources at our disposal to think about the maybe shorter and more medium-term views here as well.
Yeah, and I think to add maybe, so oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, I said you cannot call it meta. That's the best.
So we do have these discretionary treasury pools that are part of the initial allocation that we can use to fund new projects. And I think as Paul had alluded to, when the ecosystem is sort of running, the game the first Echelon game is launched, Parallel, these things will be coming in and they'll be building up sort of this treasury. So these royalties that you're like on the secondary sales, they're going to this sort of community pool that we're sort of all funding, and the portion of that, or however we cut up that pool is one idea is like we would be seeding these or helping use those, sorry, using the funds in that pool to support new projects coming out. So it's sort of part and parcel to like how we sort of envision building this is like, you know, the community is sort of funding this treasury. We're using this treasury to launch tools and games that you know, us Echelon community members would want to play, which then sort of creates more sort of opportunities through syncs and sort of fees to keep generating a platform or a suite of games essentially.
Yeah, great answer. I think we covered that perfectly. And in all honesty, it's just like, you know, you have Parallel in the ecosystem, which is, in my opinion, gonna be one of the best TCG games to ever come out there. And then just getting even other games that could reach the point of their best in their individual fields and put them in our ecosystem is gonna be so valuable, and it's gonna be helping everybody on every community. Because remember, there is no actual good, in my opinion, of course, play to earn game out there as of right now. So we wanted to achieve the greatest heights we possibly can. Also, a follow-up question from Hey. Can we expect that this might be outlined in the future in additional public-facing documentation? Maybe?
I think on this front, like, just to echo a little bit of what I've been hearing from the other EPs, is that our focus right now is on a few specific things in terms of, you know, getting the charter set up. You know, there's kind of a few fundamental tasks that we have as first year emissaries, and you know, I think any documentation that we're going to be releasing is sort of going to be more focused on the fundamentals at first. And to me personally, the expansion of the Prime ecosystem to include other games is more of like a distant priority. That's not to say that it can't happen in the short or medium term, given, like, you know, if the stars are aligned or if the right opportunity presents itself. But you know, personally, the way I see it is that there, you know, before we start spreading ourselves too thin between, you know, multiple games and stuff, we have, you know, a bird in hand is better than two in the bush. And I think this bird in hand that we have with Parallel is worth all of our, you know, kind of, or the majority of our love and attention. And, you know, kind of getting that right and launching Prime and all these other things are, for me personally, kind of like a priority before we would start really going deep on outlining, you know, in writing exact ways that other games could join the ecosystem. I don't know if some of you guys have another take on that.
Yeah, I agree, Cold. I think we it's a good idea. Hey, hi. I think we want to be flexible here, and I'm not sure if you're asking if we want to say that there's a specific percentage that's reserved for this, but it's probably too early to come up with that specific percentage. You know, I think games that might join, you know, later, for example, you could imagine a scenario where we all do our jobs well. You know, games are paying us to join our ecosystem. So I think it might be too early to say, you know, this specific percentage of Prime is earmarked for other games.
Yeah, so guys, we are reaching almost the end of this, or our first community call. So if we can have any more questions, if anybody wants to come up for maybe 1-2 questions, please write them up. We do have J.Crew here, sorry joining late. No service disaster. For the EADA allocations, will cards that were undistributed kept in the Parallel wallet be awarded Prime, or will, for example, owners of a Recon FE at the time of Prime Event 1 get a weight allocation on the Prime from the set pool like ParaSets? should I?
I'm not sure if I understand the question, to be honest.
So as I understand it, which I might don't know exactly.
I think I understand the question, which is like all the unreleased cards, would they get a claim on the on Prime? That I don't know. I'll say that like my assumption would be that cards that don't belong to the community wouldn't get it, but it sort of seems
Again,
seems like
disclaimer on everything here.
yeah. I mean cards that are just like in packs, right? I think that's the question. Like, are cards in
Yes,
packs?
yes,
or
undistributed cards.
I mean, that would just sort of mean that Parallel would get all the Prime from those, which I don't know. That's a question that we can clarify with them. But I would imagine that if there are cards that are unreleased, that they wouldn't get part of the claim.
And just to piggyback on this, it is absolutely not Parallel's intention to be claiming Prime from undistributed cards.
Hey guys, I think the question that J. Crew had, because I spoke with him the other day about it, was more towards so prior to PE2, there was only a handful of cards that were distributed to card holders. But the edition size on the card is something like 20,000 or 30,000. I think the question is more along the lines of, for the PE2 or the PE1 event, for the Prime that's allocated to that particular card and other cards that are in that category, is it more a signal of the edition size for the card, or for the number of holders of like cards that are distributed? So there's 52 cards out there, but the edition size is 30,000. Is it a distribution model for the edition size, or a distribution model for number of cards that are in people's wallets? I think is what the question was.
Oh, and we have a further explanation from J. Crew. So holders of a per se recon would get a larger claim because there were only 1 out of 100 cards out there. So so basically, since there are less cards out, it would be less diluted. Is the question?
So I think this is a good question. This is part of I think when it comes to specific formulas that we're beginning to discuss at this phase, and so we don't have a final answer for you on this. I think
to be announced then. We should better say.
To be announced.
Yeah, there are definitely going to be a lot of questions that we're going to cover in future community calls. We don't really need to go over them right now. There are a lot of things that we need to discuss and, speak with all the other EPs. So there might be some things that we can, alleviate in the future. But I think we did a great job today. And, it's about time. I mean, if anybody has any last questions, like one more, we can take, but it's almost over. But since nobody is willing to, I think we're gonna call it in for the day. We are at almost the hour mark, and we did cover a lot of the questions I personally saw from the community. And thank you all so much for joining. Have an amazing day. We love you all for giving us your questions and allowing us to answer them. If you have anything else to talk about, we'll have another community call next month. Probably, disclaimer, and we'll see you all later. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks for joining, everybody, and have a great weekend.
Have a good one.